All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about one of ecology's most powerful predictive tools, and that is age structure.
So how can a simple shape predict the future of an entire population? I know it sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? But it's actually a super fundamental concept in population dynamics. We're going to explore exactly how ecologists use a simple graph to forecast whether a population is going to grow, shrink, or just stay stable.
Okay, so what is an age-structured population? Well, at its core, it's not just about counting how many individuals there are, it's about breaking them down by age. Who's young, who's in their prime reproductive years, and who's past that stage. And believe me, that structure, that's the key to unlocking what's going to happen next.
And to really get a handle on this, we divide any population into three crucial groups. First up, you've got your pre-reproductive individuals. Think of them as the population's future. They're the ones who are going to be breeding down the line. Then you have the reproductive group. These guys are the engine of the population, right? They're the ones actively contributing to the birth rate right now. And finally, the post-reproductive class. Pretty self-explanatory, they're past their breeding age. It's the balance, or sometimes the imbalance, between these three groups that tells us so much.
So, how do we see this balance? Well, the tool we use is actually brilliant in its simplicity. It's called the age pyramid. This thing gives us an instant visual snapshot of a population's age distribution. Seriously, just by glancing at the shape, we can diagnose the health of that population and predict where it's headed. So let's break down the three main shapes you're going to see.
Okay, first up, we have the expanding pyramid. This one tells a really clear story of growth. The absolute key thing to look at here is the base. See how wide it is at the bottom? That wide base means there's a huge proportion of young, pre-reproductive individuals. And what happens when they all grow up? Well, this massive group is going to enter their reproductive years pretty soon, and that's going to create a population boom. The shape itself is practically shouting rapid growth ahead.
So let's just nail this down. A broad base packed with young individuals is your #1 indicator of an expanding population. It's got huge potential for future growth. And you see this pattern all over the place in nature. Think about insect populations booming in the summer, or those fast-growing annual plants.
All right, let's move on to our next shape. Because not all populations are booming. Some have actually found a kind of perfect balance.
This one looks more like a bell or maybe a column, and it tells a story of stability. Take a look at the bars for the pre-reproductive and the reproductive groups. See how they're roughly the same size? That's the key. It means the number of new individuals being born is just about enough to replace the older generation. It's what we call replacement-level reproduction, a state of equilibrium. So the big takeaway here is that the birth rate is basically canceling out the death rate. This leads to a population size that stays pretty stable over time. A great example of this is a lot of bird populations, where their numbers just kind of hold steady from one generation to the next.
And that brings us to our third and final shape. This one tells a very, very different story. A story of a population that's actually shrinking.
Once again, your eyes should go straight to the base. Notice how narrow it is? It's much smaller than the groups above it. Some people call this an urn-shaped pyramid, and it's basically a warning sign. It tells you there are way fewer young individuals on their way up than there are folks currently in the reproductive stage. And that can only mean one thing: the population is headed for a decline. So yeah, a narrow base means fewer future breeders, which inevitably leads to a shrinking population. You see this pattern a lot in species with low birth rates, like many large mammals, and it's also something we see in some aging human populations across the globe.
Okay, so let's boil this all down into a super simple cheat sheet. If the pre-reproductive group is the biggest chunk of your pyramid, you can bet on growth. If the pre-reproductive and reproductive groups are about the same size, you're looking at stability. And if the post-reproductive group is the dominant one, well, a decline is on the horizon. It's a surprisingly direct and really powerful relationship when you think about it.
Now, this isn't just some abstract theoretical exercise, right? Understanding age structure is absolutely critical for real-world conservation. It's how ecologists predict if a species is even viable long-term. It helps them build management plans for endangered species, and it's essential for setting sustainable harvesting policies. This is really where the theory hits the ground and becomes a vital tool.
All right, now for those of you who really want to nail this topic, let's talk about a couple of common traps. These are things that can easily trip you up if you're not careful.
Okay, trap number 1 is mixing up age structure with survivorship curves. It's an easy mistake to make. Just remember this.
An age structure pyramid is like a snapshot. It's a picture of the entire population at one specific moment in time. A survivorship curve is more like a movie. It follows a single group of individuals, a cohort, from birth all the way to death. They're two very different tools that answer two very different questions.
All right, here's trap number 2, and I'll put it to you as a question. Let's say you come across a species and its population is huge, millions of individuals. Is it safe to assume that population is healthy and growing?
The answer is a hard no, and this is a big one. Population size by itself can be really misleading. The truly crucial factor is always the age composition. You could have a massive population that's mostly made up of post-reproductive individuals. It might look impressive on the surface, but if you drew its age pyramid, it would be urn-shaped, clearly pointing to a future decline.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that analyzing age structure, especially when you visualize it with these simple, elegant pyramids, is an incredibly powerful tool. It lets us take a snapshot of a population right now and with some pretty remarkable accuracy predict what's going to happen to it in the future.